Hey, Systemic family, this is Dr. Mongeon. I am super excited to join you guys wherever you are today or this evening. I'm going to talk specifically about micronutrient testing. One of my key components of my functional medicine practice is always lab testing. And people always question me about what labs do I run, how do I read those labs, what recommendations do I make off of those labs. So in this webinar, by the way, this is going to be a 3-part webinar. In the first part of this webinar, I'm going to talk about the overview of the micronutrient lab, why we do it. The second and third parts of the lab, I'm going to break down every single micronutrient that we test. I'm going to tell you what systemic products that you would recommend for your clients, and also we're going to talk about what foodstuffs you can recommend to your clients to help get their levels back to where they need to be. So a little bit about myself. I own an integrated practice in Nebraska, and I also am the chief medical officer of a virtual medical model called Unprescribed. So micronutrient blood testing, first off, so we don't get 3,000 emails, the company that I use for micronutrient testing is actually a brand new company that does a really great job, and they are called Vibrant America. So just quite simple, go to vibrant-america.com, look at their stuff, find your rep. But I'm going to talk about their lab, and they're not the only micronutrient test that's out there, though if you have a background of other micronutrient tests, you're going to find that this particular test is really head and shoulders above the rest. So in the first part of this webinar, we're going to talk about what are micronutrients. We're going to talk about the role of micronutrients. We're going to ask why should we even test for micronutrients. We're then going to go through what micronutrients are actually being tested. And then we're going to talk about who might be the ideal candidate inside of your practice to be tested for micronutrients. Now, lovingly, I'll tell you that I test almost all of my patients with micronutrients, and hopefully by the end of this webinar, you too will do the same. So let's talk about micronutrients. Many of us that do dietary recommendations will talk about macronutrients. Remember, macronutrients are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Micronutrients are, so as opposed to those things, micronutrients are comprised of vitamins and minerals, which, as you know, are required in small quantities to ensure normal metabolism, growth, and well-being. So vitamins, let's talk about vitamins specifically. These are essential organic nutrients, most of which are not made in the body, or if they are, most of the time in insufficient amounts, and usually must be obtained through food. When dietary intake of a vitamin is inadequate, deficiency disorders result. Now, although all vitamins are present and require minute quantities, compared to macronutrients, they are just as vital to health and need to be considered in the context of nutrition quality. Minerals themselves are inorganic nutrients that also play a key role in ensuring health and well-being. They include trace amounts of copper, iodine, iron, manganese, potassium, and selenium. Now, as with vitamins, minerals are found in small quantities within the body and are obtained from a wide variety of foods. No single food contains all of the vitamins and minerals we need. So if you're that person that just says, hey, if you have that client that just says, oh, I eat a healthy diet, so therefore I don't take vitamins, you know just as well as I do that the reality is they're not getting their stuff. So we say that a balanced and varied diet is necessary for adequate intake. However, you must do supplementation alongside of that. This particular test that we run does both intracellular and extracellular. So let me touch on extracellular micronutrients. Micronutrients that are free and floating in the blood that exist outside of the cells are in plasma. These are called extracellular micronutrients. So these are not in the cell, they are in the plasma. These micronutrients are static in measure of what is inside your blood at any given time. These are dependent upon your short-term, so 1 to 2 weeks, your short-term intake of supplements and diet, and give a direct assessment of your baseline micronutrient level. Extracellular nutrient test reflects a person's diet and supplement intake over a relatively narrow period of time. Again, somewhere in that 1 to 2 week range. And we're going to talk about this at the end, though I want to talk about it now also. When you have this test drawn, by the way, this is a whole blood test. When you have a patient drawn on this, I would recommend that they stop taking their supplements for about a week. We truly want to get an idea of what their body can assimilate inside of the cell. Moving on to intracellular micronutrients. Intracellular micronutrients are the micronutrients absorbed by your circulating white blood cells and red blood cells. Cellular micronutrient absorption is an important step in maintaining and promoting optimal functioning in every single cell in your body. Now, genetics, aging, lifestyle, toxicity, chronic illness, and medications all affect your cellular nutrient absorption. Intracellular testing reveals your functional status over a much longer period of time. According to the research, it's somewhere in that 4 to 6 month number. So that's the nice thing about this. The other thing is, like, how often do I retest this? I redo the micronutrient panel every 6 months on all of my patients. So the role of micronutrients. Every physiological function in the body requires micronutrients to function optimally. The favorite analogy that I explain this to people is what I call the pothole analogy. So let's say instead of being a doctor, I work for the street crew in your local city, and my job is to go up and down the streets of your local community, and I look for potholes. And I have the equipment with asphalt and spades, and anytime I come along a pothole, I grab my spade and I grab asphalt, and I start to put asphalt into that pothole. So the analogy of that is, when we look for micronutrient deficiencies, we're literally looking for potholes inside of your system. Now, this is super important to understand. Going back to being your street worker in your local city. If I continue to pile asphalt on top of that pothole, past the point that it's a level piece of road, that pothole now becomes a speed bump. And if you're driving on the streets in that town, that speed bump is just as deleterious to your vehicle as the pothole. So if you are recommending supplements to your patients and not giving them an endpoint or telling them when you're going to retest for those supplements, we're making the assumption that the person is supposed to take this nutrient or this supplement over and over and over. And by the way, if you're that person, and I'm talking to myself also, this is why you have poor compliance with your patients. This is why you have poor follow-up supplement sales, is because you've never given your client a game plan as to why they're taking it, how much they need. You're doing a good job of that, but what you're not telling them is, here's how long you're going to take it, and here's when we're going to retest whether or not you need to take more of this product. So that's what's super important, and I'm guilty just as you are. We have clients and patients that probably have cupboards full of stuff that they probably just stopped taking because they're not sure why they were supposed to take it anymore. So hopefully that little analogy blesses you from that standpoint. Vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. So let's talk about kind of the roles that they play inside your body. So first off, let's just talk about the old Krebs cycle, right? The Krebs cycle. Producing and releasing energy. Strengthening the immune system. I'll get to this, but you guys would be so surprised how many times I see things like vitamin D really high in the serum. And then when we actually ask what made it into the cell, we see that the cell is deficient. So think about this, right? Vitamin D is actually a hormone. So if there's a bunch sitting out in the serum, very much like insulin resistance, that is not making it into the cell where it can actually be used. Reducing systemic inflammation, protecting against free radical damage, maintaining a healthy hormonal balance, maintaining insulin sensitivity, slowing down cellular aging, and then promoting the health of literally all the tissues in your body: skin, bone, brain, breast, gut, prostate, heart, muscles, etc. Next, I'm going to go through with you why we need to test for micronutrients. So the nice thing about this is that this particular test, as opposed to other tests, tests for both intracellular and extracellular numbers. So this truly gives a picture of how the body is functioning at a cellular level. The benefits of extracellular testing. Now, I like to really know what got into the cell because that's what your body can use. However, we need to know what's outside of the cell also. So let's talk about extracellular testing and the benefits of that. Extracellular tests identify baseline nutritional deficiencies. So if you are deficient extracellularly, you are blatantly deficient. So because if it's not outside the cell, there's never a chance it can get inside the cell. It's impossible. Secondly, we also can detect higher than normal levels of vitamins and minerals in the blood. Now, it's also important that people take that week off of their supplements, because if someone mega doses on vitamin C 3 hours before this test, then guess what? We're going to get a false negative on this test. Yes, they have too much, but it's because they didn't follow the directions. Also, it identifies over-supplementation. As a clinician with biochemical individuality, we need to know what type of volume we're giving our clients and our patients. And then it's also important for us to do this test because there could be unnecessary supplements used. So, it's expensive, and people joke it can be a load on the kidneys and the liver, and at the end of the day, it just makes expensive pee. Let's talk about the benefits now of intracellular testing. So now we're talking about what's actually inside the white blood cell and also the red blood cell. So the most important concept of this is we actually identify cellular nutrient absorption. Again, remember I said I've seen many times vitamin B12 and vitamin D just come to my head immediately, where I see really high extracellular serum levels and low intracellular things. So this actually tells us how well this cell can absorb. It also gives us an idea. Think of like hemoglobin A1C, right? Hemoglobin A1C is a 6 to 8 week measure of glucose. Well, intracellular testing is a 4 to 6 month measure of nutrient status. So what micronutrients are tested? So we test vitamins, minerals, amino acids, antioxidants, metabolites, and then we actually look at intracellular red blood cell nutrients and fatty acids. So the vitamins are vitamin A, vitamin B1, vitamin B2, vitamin B3, vitamin B5, B6, B12, vitamin C, vitamin D3, vitamin E, and then lastly vitamin K1 and vitamin K2. The minerals that we're testing are calcium, manganese, zinc, copper, chromium, and iron. The amino acids are asparagine, glutamine, and serine. Antioxidants, my favorites, coenzyme Q10, cysteine, glutathione, and selenium. Metabolites, choline, inositol, carnitine, and something called MMA, methylmalonic acid. From an intracellular standpoint, in the red blood cell, we look at folate, vitamin B9, we look at magnesium, and we also look at the fatty acids, both omega-3 and omega-6. You guys hear, and we'll get to this, but the fatty acids are so important. As a clinician, you must know why you're recommending CVO or RPM or ALG or omega. You guys have all of these tools inside of Systemic, and I know you have your favorites, yet here's a way for you to help quantify which one's a better pick for you. So who should we run this lab on? So here's kind of a short list of who we should actually run this lab with. So we should look at diabetics, people that have cardiovascular disease, people that have arthritis, skin problems, people that have paresthesias, numbness and tingling, and then people with weakened immune systems. We should also do this with people that have digestive issues, celiac disease, wheat sensitivity, IBS, IBD, even SIBO. Also, people that have advanced aging, people that have chronic stress, chronic fatigue, depression, long-term use of prescription medications, people that have poor diets, people that are obese, people that are athletic competitors. We've been blessed to work with a lot of Olympic and world champion athletes, those that exercise regularly, and then especially people that are vegans and vegetarians. In conclusion, micronutrient testing is a huge asset in the management of functional medicine patients. If you are selling vitamins in your clinic, I feel, or if someone is taking a vitamin, knowing what we know now about this test, I feel that there's no need to take something unless the test has proven it. One of my favorite mantras is this: don't guess, test. So this micronutrient test, I know, is going to be a huge blessing for you and your practice. In the next webinar, I'm going to start to go through all of the individual constituents so that you know what we're testing for and what to recommend. Hey guys, Dr. Mongeon here. Part 2 of our micronutrient webinar. Just to recap for you really quick, in part 1 of this webinar, by the way, if you haven't watched part 1, please take the short amount of time that it would to go back. In that webinar, I talked specifically about the lab that we use. By the way, it's called Vibrant America. I talk about what micronutrient test is. I talk about micronutrients and macronutrients. I break down the role of these things inside of the body. It really gives you a true overview so that when you get the results, you know what you're looking at. And more importantly, for your patient or your client, it gives you the ability to do a recommendation. So this particular test is a whole blood test. It's a blood draw, but it doesn't need to be spun down. It gets sent out to the lab. In this webinar, I'm actually going to walk through specifically the vitamins and the minerals. There's over 30 different things that this test measures. In the part 2 webinar here, I'm going to go over all of the vitamins and all of the minerals. Now, when I go over this in this webinar, I'm going to tell you which marker, which micronutrient we're looking at. I'm then going to specifically tell you what systemic formula product you would recommend to replenish that. Now, keep in mind, for some of these, there's like 7 recommendations. The idea of this is you want to use as few products as possible to cover as many bases as possible. Systemic doesn't carry a lot of onesie-twosie things. They don't carry just a straight up vitamin C. They have CTV, right, which has a bunch of things in it. And that's beautiful because we want to be able to go in and find a single product that can cover as many deficiencies as possible. It is not uncommon to get a lab back from a patient that has, 5, 10, sometimes 15 different deficiencies. And what they don't want is 15 bottles of vitamins. They would love for you to serve them well and cover as many bases as possible with as few bottles of supplements. What I'm then going to do is I'm then going to run through a whole slug of foods that also can help replenish the deficiency. Lovingly though, what I'm going to tell you right now is you're going to see that taking a vitamin in most cases is way more convenient and probably even cheaper than going and finding the profound amounts of foods that you would need to recover that deficiency. So let's jump into it here. The first one we're going to go over is vitamin A. So the systemic products for vitamin A are ENRG, number 1 activator, ACX, ACP, and ROX. So specifically, and all of the dosages that I use in this webinar are all of the amounts are per dose. So ACX has 39,900 IUs per dose. ACP has 31,500 IUs. Number 1 has 20,000 IUs of vitamin A. ROX has 5,000 IUs. And ENRG has 10,000 IUs per dose of vitamin A. Foods for vitamin A. Carrots, 1 cup of carrots has 21,000 IUs of vitamin A. A half of a cup of sweet potato has 9,500 IUs of vitamin A. 1 cup of kale has 6,700 IUs. And 3 ounces of beef liver has 14,000 IUs of vitamin A. The next nutrient is vitamin B1. To replenish a deficiency of vitamin B1, you would choose between B16, Spectra 1, Neurosin, and Calm. Neurosin has 100 milligrams, Calm has 25 milligrams, B16 has 20 milligrams, and Spectra 1 has 12.5 milligrams. Foods that have B1 in them, 1 cup of green peas has, get this, 0.38 milligrams. Asparagus, 1 cup has 0.19 milligrams. Brussels sprouts, 1 cup has 1.122 milligrams. Sunflower seeds, a 1/4 cup has 0.17 milligrams. Flax seeds, 1 tablespoon has 0.115 milligrams. and spinach, one small bunch, has 0.265 milligrams. So vitamin B1 is a true example that taking a vitamin as opposed to slamming pounds and pounds of food is much easier to do. Vitamin B2. If someone is deficient in vitamin 2, we would recommend either B16, Spectra 1, or Moors. B16 has 25 milligrams of vitamin B2, Spectra has 12.5 milligrams, and Moors has 2 milligrams of the riboflavin 5-phosphate form of vitamin B2. Foods that contain B2, beef liver, 3 ounces contain 2.9 milligrams. Lamb, 3 ounces contain 3.9 milligrams. Almonds, 1 ounce equals 0.32 milligrams. 2 large eggs have 0.4 milligrams. And lastly, 3 ounces of salmon have 2 milligrams. The foods that contain vitamin B2, green peas, 1 cup equal 0.386 milligrams. Asparagus, 1 cup equals 0.19 milligrams. Brussels sprouts, 1 cup equals 0.122 milligrams. Sunflower seeds, a quarter cup equals 0.17 milligrams. Flax seeds, 1 tablespoon, have 0.115 milligrams. And spinach, 1 bunch, has 0.265 milligrams. Next, vitamin B3. If someone has a deficiency in vitamin B3, you would choose between B16, Eventa, Spectra 1, Epic, or Moors. B16 has 40 milligrams per serving of vitamin B3. Spectra has 17.5 milligrams. Moors has 20 milligrams. Epic has 20 milligrams. And also Eventa has 20 milligrams of vitamin B3. Foods that contain vitamin B3, 1 turkey breast has 100 milligrams. 3 ounces of tuna has 11.3 milligrams. 3 ounces of chicken breast has 8.9 milligrams. And 1 small slice of liver has 11.9 milligrams. Vitamin B5. If someone has a deficiency in vitamin B5, you would choose between B16, Spectra 1, or Moors. B16 has 55 milligrams per dose. Spectra has 30 milligrams, and Moors has the 5-MTHF form at 900 micrograms per dose. Foods that contain vitamin B5, chicken liver, 3 ounces, has 8.3 milligrams. Mushrooms, 1 cup, has 1.3 milligrams. Avocado, 1 whole avocado equals 2 milligrams. Sunflower seeds, 1 ounce equals 2 milligrams. And salmon, 3 ounces equals 2 milligrams of vitamin B5. Vitamin B6. If someone has a B6 deficiency, you would choose between Neurosin, B16, Spectra 1, or Calm. B16 has 20 milligrams of B6. Spectra has 25 milligrams of B6. Neurosin has 4 milligrams of the pyridoxine 5-phosphate form of B6. And Calm also has 4 milligrams of the pyridoxine 5-phosphate form of vitamin B6. Foods that contain vitamin B6, turkey breast, 3 ounces of turkey breast have 0.7 milligrams. 3 ounces of tuna have 0.9 milligrams. 3 ounces of salmon, 0.6 milligrams. And 3 ounces of chicken breast have 0.5 milligrams. Vitamin B12. If someone has a vitamin B12 deficiency, you would choose between Moors, B16, or Eventa. Moors has 600 micrograms of methylcobalamin. B16 has 155 micrograms of hydroxycobalamin, and Eventa has 40 micrograms. Foods that contain B12, 3 ounces of clams has 84.1 micrograms. 3 ounces of beef liver have 70.7 micrograms. 3 ounces of salmon have 4.8 micrograms. And 3 ounces of tuna have 2.5 micrograms of vitamin B12. Vitamin C deficiency. If someone has a deficiency On vitamin C, you would choose between ROX, ACX, number 1 activator, number 5 stabilizer, or CTV. CTV has 1,500 milligrams per dose. ACX has 300 milligrams per dose. Number 1 has 320 milligrams per dose. Number 5 has 210 micrograms. And ROX has 98 milligrams per dose of vitamin C. If someone has a deficiency in vitamin C, the foods you might recommend: 1 cup of broccoli has 102 milligrams. 1 cup of Brussels sprouts has 96 milligrams. A half a cup of red peppers has 95 milligrams. Half a cup of green peppers has 90 milligrams. And lastly, a cup of kale has 80 milligrams of vitamin C. If someone has a vitamin D3 deficiency, you would choose between Spectra 2, vitamin D3 liquid, DV3, or number 5 stabilizer. DV3 has 4,350 IUs per serving. Vitamin D3 liquid has 3,000 IUs. Spectra 2 has 1,000 IUs. And number 5 stabilizer has 1,250 IUs of vitamin D3 per serving. Foods that contain vitamin D3: cod liver. 1 tablespoon of cod liver has 1,350 IUs. Salmon, 3 ounces, has 450 IUs of vitamin D3. Vitamin E deficiency. If your patient or client has a deficiency in vitamin E, you would choose between Vista 2, AZV, EZV, DV3, Spectra 1, or ACX. ACX has 180 IUs. EZV has 200 IUs. DV3 has 30.5 IUs. AZV has 50 IUs. Spectra has 50 IUs, and Vista 2 has 30 IUs of vitamin E. Foods that contain vitamin E: a quarter cup of sweet potatoes has 16.8 milligrams. 1 teaspoon of wheat germ oil has 20.3 milligrams. 1 ounce of sunflower seeds has 7.4 milligrams. And 1 ounce of almonds has 6.8 milligrams of vitamin E. If someone presents on this lab with a vitamin K1 deficiency, the choices you would choose between are multi-LQ, Kids Play, and number 5 stabilizer. Number 5 has 40 micrograms, Kids Play has 65 micrograms, and multi-LQ has 120 micrograms of vitamin K1. Foods that contain K1: 1 cup of kale contains 890 micrograms. 3 ounces of natto has 850 micrograms. Half a cup of collards, 530 micrograms. And finally, a half a cup of turnip greens have 430 micrograms of vitamin K1. Vitamin K2. If your patient or client has a deficiency in vitamin K2, you would choose between Spectra 2, vitamin D3 liquid, DV3, or CalMD liquid. DV3 has 85 micrograms. Vitamin D3 liquid has 80 micrograms. CalMD liquid has 80 micrograms. And Spectra 2 also has 80 micrograms of vitamin K2. There are no known foods that replenish vitamin K2, so you must use supplements if you see a K2 deficiency. Also, it's very common to see a vitamin D3 deficiency coupled with a K2 deficiency, and that's why it's brilliant that DV3 and vitamin D3 liquid have the proper ratio of vitamin D3 and vitamin K2 together. Moving on to calcium. The 3 products that contain calcium are Calcium Plus, Bones Play, and Calcium MD liquid. Cal Plus has 650 milligrams, Bones Play has 650 milligrams, and also Cal MD liquid has 650 milligrams of calcium per dose. Most common foods that contain calcium: 1 cup of kale contains 245 milligrams. 6 ounces of yogurt, a kefir, has 300 milligrams of calcium. And lastly, 3 ounces of sardines contain 330 milligrams of calcium. Magnesium. If your patient or client have a magnesium deficiency, you would choose between Multimineral Plus, KDIR, Chiro, or ENRG. KDIR has 20 milligrams of magnesium. ENRG has 3 milligrams of magnesium. Chiro has 6 milligrams of magnesium, and Min has 2 milligrams of magnesium. Foods that contain magnesium: 1 ounce of hazelnuts have 1.8 milligrams. 1 ounce of pumpkin seeds have 1.3 milligrams. 1 ounce of macadamia nuts have 1.1 milligram. And 1 cup of white beans contain 1.1 milligram of magnesium. Next, we have zinc. So if your patient has a zinc deficiency, you have multiple products to choose from. You can choose from Min, Spectra 1, Zinc, DV3, Cal Plus, Moors, or CalMD liquid. Min has 10 milligrams of zinc. ZNC has 10 milligrams of zinc. Cal has 10 milligrams. CalMD liquid has 8.5 milligrams. Moors has 7.8 milligrams. Spectra has 7.5 milligrams. And DV3 has 5.1 milligrams per dose of zinc. Foods that contain zinc: 3 ounces of lamb contains 6.7 milligrams. 1 cup of pumpkin seeds contains 6.6 milligrams. 100 grams of grass-fed beef contain 4.5 milligrams. 1 ounce of cocoa powder has 1.9 milligrams. 1 ounce of cashews has 1.6 milligrams. And lastly, 1 cup of mushrooms have 1.4 milligrams of zinc. Copper. If a patient or client has a deficiency in copper, you would choose between Min, Multi-LQ, Epic, or CTV. Min has 1 milligram, Epic has 1 milligram, Multi-LQ has 100 micrograms, and CTV also has 100 micrograms per dose of copper. Foods that contain copper: 3 ounces of beef liver contain 14 milligrams of copper. A 1/4 cup of sunflower seeds has 0.63 milligrams. 1 cup of asparagus has 0.5 milligrams. And a 1/4 cup of almonds have 0.4 milligrams of copper. Chromium deficiency. To address a chromium deficiency, you would choose between Min, MetaboShake, or Sinulin. Sinulin has 1 milligram per dose. Min has 100 micrograms per dose. And MetaboShake has 55 micrograms of chromium per dose. Foods that can replenish a chromium deficiency: 3 ounces of mussels have 110 micrograms. 1 cup of broccoli has 18.55 micrograms. And 2 teaspoons of garlic have 12 micrograms of chromium. Iron. If a patient has an iron deficiency, you would choose between Min or AZV. Min has 15 milligrams, and AZV has 13 milligrams per dose of iron. Iron-rich foods: 1 ounce of spirulina has 8 milligrams. 1 cup of spinach has 6.4 milligrams. 3 ounces of grass-fed beef have 4 milligrams. 1/2 cup of sardines has 3.6 milligrams. 1/2 cup of lentils has 3.3 milligrams. An ounce of dark chocolate has 3.3 milligrams. And 1/2 cup of black beans contains 2 milligrams of iron. So this concludes going through the vitamins and the minerals of the micronutrient test. In the next webinar, part 3, I'm going to go through the rest of the micronutrients so that when you get those lab results back from your patients and clients, you are equipped to give them the best recommendations possible. Hey guys, Dr. Mongeon here. In this webinar, this is actually part 3 of a 3-part webinar where I am going through and I am talking specifically about micronutrient blood testing. In the first webinar, I talked about the logistics of the test itself, What do we test for? Why do we test for it? Who should we test? So if you haven't seen that one, this one's not going to make a lot of sense to you. Go back and watch part 1. In part 2, I go through all of the vitamins and minerals. And again, just like on this webinar, I went through exactly if there's a deficiency, what systemic products you use, and what foods you recommend and why. And in this particular webinar, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to take the rest of this lab and I'm going to go through the specifics of what micronutrient we're looking at, what systemic products you would recommend if they're deficient, and what foods you might tweak their dietary program with if they're off also. Now, when you go through this, there are some of these, like I said last time, that have 7 different vitamins that can cover one deficiency. Why I put multiple vitamins in here is because when you run this test on one of your clients or patients, you're going to see that they're going to have multiple deficiencies. The goal then, as a good doctor, is to give them the least amount of supplements to cover all of their deficiencies. Because what you don't want is if someone has 15 deficiencies, please do not send them home with 15 different bottles. The other thing that I really want to stress about this test is this test gets re-ran every 6 months. Your white blood cell holds nutritional status every 6 months, just like we run hemoglobin A1C to give a 6 to 8-ish week of glucose. The intracellular micronutrient test gives us a 4 to 6 month idea of what's going on inside of the body. If you're going to recommend this to a patient or a client, have them not have any of their supplements for about a week prior. Why that is important on this particular test, because I just told you it's a 6 month thing, this particular test from Vibrant America actually also measures the extracellular nutrient status. So you get both an extracellular status and an intracellular status. Extracellular is 1 to 2 weeks, intracellular is 4 to 6 months. So you get a much better component when you look at a patient. So with that said, let's jump into the second half of our deficiencies. And again, if you have any questions as you go through these, definitely reach out to me through Systemic, and I'm super happy to come alongside of you and help you just serve and bless patients that much better. All right, so we're talking first about the asparagine deficiency. The options for that are eNRG, DB12, D-Digest, Pro, and number 2 Builder. Pro has 3 milligrams per serving. Number 2 Builder also has 3 milligrams. D-Digest has 3 milligrams, and DB12, 3 milligrams. And lastly, eNRG has 3 milligrams per dose of asparagine. If someone has a deficiency in asparagine, you would want to recommend asparagus, grass-fed whey, grass-fed steak, and sockeye salmon for them. Now, I don't have amounts on these because I wasn't really able to find specifically those components, so these are the foods you want to add to them. So the next one is actually glutamine. I'm going to apologize now, it says asparagine, but it's glutamine. If someone has a glutamine deficiency, you would recommend either G-Cell or L-Gut. For glutamine, L-Gut has 100 milligrams per dose, and G-Cell has 85 milligrams per dose of glutamine. Glutamine foods: bone broth, grass-fed beef, spirulina, asparagus, broccoli, venison, salmon, or turkey. The next amino acid that we're going to go over is serine. If someone has a serine deficiency, you would choose between Vista-1, number 2 Builder, or Moors. Vista-1 has 18 milligrams per dose, Moors has 5 milligrams per dose, and number 2 Builder has 3 milligrams per dose of the amino acid serine. Foods for serine: 3 egg whites give 5.6 grams, 2 whole eggs give 3.77 grams, 3 ounces of turkey, 1.8 grams, 3 ounces of tuna, 1.7 grams, and 3 ounces of salmon have 1.6 grams of the amino acid serine. The antioxidant coenzyme Q10 is quite often deficient. If someone's deficient in CoQ10, you would choose between eNRG, ROX, or CVO-R. CVO-R has 52 milligrams per dose, eNRG has 50 milligrams per dose, and Rox has 10 milligrams per dose of coenzyme Q10. Foods that contain CoQ10, grass-fed beef, cage-free eggs, free-range chicken, herring, sesame seed, sardines, and cauliflower. Cysteine. The amino acid cysteine is also quite commonly deficient. If your patient or client is deficient in cysteine, you would choose between Neurosin, Epic, or G-Cell. Neurosin has 100 milligrams of cysteine, G-Cell has 75 milligrams, and Epic has 66 milligrams per dose of the amino acid cysteine. Foods that contain cysteine: 3 ounces of beef round top roast has 391 milligrams. 3 ounces of chicken has 360 milligrams. 2 whole eggs has 292 milligrams. And 1 ounce of sunflower seeds has 126 milligrams. And lastly, a half a cup of split peas have 120 milligrams of cysteine. Glutathione, again, typo, I apologize for that. Glutathione, if someone has a deficiency in glutathione, the slam dunk is G-Cell. There are 250 milligrams per dose of glutathione in G-Cell. Foods that contain glutathione: grass-fed whey protein, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, chickpeas, and asparagus. We're now going to go over selenium. If your client has a deficiency in selenium, you would choose between Min, TMI, or Moors. Min has 55 micrograms of selenium, Moors has 4.8 micrograms, and TMI has 2 micrograms. Now, with any of these, you always want to go back and forth and understand the bigger clinical picture, right? If someone had a deficiency in selenium, but their thyroid was functioning well, you'd never give them TMI, right? So use your clinical judgment, and again, knock over as many birds with one stone as you can when it comes to these deficiencies. Foods that contain selenium: 1 ounce of Brazil nuts is 544 micrograms, 3 ounces of halibut, 47 micrograms, 3 ounces of yellowfin tuna, 92 micrograms, 3 ounces of grass-fed beef is 33 micrograms of selenium. Next, we're going to talk about choline. If your patient or client has a deficiency in choline, you would choose between B16, DB12, Neurosin, or Moors. B16 has 126 milligrams, Moors has 100 milligrams, DB12 has 64 milligrams, and Neurosin has 50 milligrams per dose of choline. Foods that contain choline: a dry egg yolk has 1,388 micrograms, 3 ounces of beef liver have 426 micrograms, 3 ounces of cod contain 291 milligrams, and 1 head of cauliflower has 260.5 milligrams of choline. Next, we're going to talk about inositol. If there's a deficiency in inositol, you would choose between B16 or Vista-1. B16 has 135 milligrams of inositol, and Vista-1 has 44 milligrams per serving of inositol. Foods: 1 cup of navy beans has 44 milligrams of inositol. Inositol is also found in kale, spinach, egg, and avocado. On to carnitine. If there's a deficiency in carnitine, you would choose between ENRG, Neurosin, or Epic. Neurosin is 180 milligrams, Epic has 32 milligrams, and ENRG has 10 milligrams per serving of carnitine. Foods that contain carnitine: 3 ounces of grass-fed beef steak have 162 milligrams of carnitine, 4 ounces of ground beef have 100 milligrams, 1 scoop of grass-fed whey has 8 to 16 milligrams, 4 ounces of codfish have 7 milligrams, and lastly, 3 ounces of chicken breast have 5 milligrams of carnitine. MMA, methylmalonic acid, and this actually has a lot to do with B12 anemia, so something to think about when you understand what MMA does. If someone has a deficiency in MMA, Eventa, Moors, or B16. Moors has 600 micrograms of methyl B12. B16 has 155 micrograms of hydroxy B12, and Eventa has 40 micrograms. Foods with MMA, so 3 ounces of grass-fed beefsteak have 162 milligrams, 4 ounces of ground beef, 100 milligrams, 1 scoop of whey, 8 to 16 milligrams, 4 ounces of cod, 7 milligrams, and 3 ounces of chicken breast, 5 milligrams. So in going through these components, you can see that there are literally hundreds of different options to replenish this particular lab. Also, when I run this lab, I really like to run this lab alongside a more common blood chemistry panel where I can look at things like liver function, kidney function, blood lipids, hormone markers, the thyroid, because it's really amazing. And I tell patients, and I've told them for many years now, if you give me the ability to run both the micronutrient panel on you and a comprehensive blood panel, having those two together, I know that I can literally give you the best recommendations possible. So the first step that I would recommend with this particular lab, if you've never done it before, is quite simply, do it on yourself. What you're going to find too with Vibrant America is they do process lab with people that have insurances, and they have a really, really cool financial policy that makes this lab very, very affordable. The next thing I want to share with you from a business standpoint is when you run labs on a patient of yours, what I have found after 18 years of being in practice is if I just recommend someone that they take a product, many times they'll take that product, but they maybe won't take it for very long, or they're not sure why they're taking that product. So I found they will buy less product. When you run labs and you sit down with your patient or client and you show them your lab results, I know because I've done this with many large practices, your authority and their understanding that they need to be taking these products skyrockets like mad. So you'll see a significant increase in supplement sales when, number one, you run the labs, number two, you explain what the labs mean and what they need to do with the labs, and most importantly, have a clear picture as to when you're going to rerun the lab so that a patient understands that this is a process. One business tip for this particular test is maybe you sell this as a package of 2. And we're going to do it now, and then we're going to do it again in 6 months so that a person is then committed for the 6-month component so that you can help walk them through. Well, I tell you what, thank you for sharing your time wherever you are in the world with me on this webinar. I love the ability to serve you as part of our systemic family. Have a blessed day.